In the face of China's massive influence on the continent and perceived threats to the international order, Japan is the latest country to try to increase engagement with Africa. Top officials, including Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, and European diplomats, have visited the continent this year. Many analysts see Western leaders' visits as an attempt to counter Beijing's clout and, to some extent, Russian influence. Japan also sought to provide an alternative to Chinese lending and investment in African countries in August 2021, pledging $30 billion to the continent and emphasizing a focus on training African professionals, food production, and green growth. The pledge was made in Tunisia during the 8th Tokyo International Conference on African Development, TICAD. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida criticized Moscow and appeared to target China in his remarks at the event. Critics argue that this opaque development finance was definitely a rebuke to China, which has been accused of engaging in debt trap diplomacy or lending heavily to countries that can't repay in order to gain political leverage. During TICAD, Japan also announced that $1 billion would be allocated to debt restructuring assistance for African countries, and that Japan aspires to be a partner growing together with Africa. While economists are increasingly agreeing that the debt trap allegations are unfounded, it remains a common criticism leveled by the West and its partners that enrages Beijing. Numerous articles in Chinese state media have slammed such remarks as a smear campaign, and Japan's investment pledge has been characterized as having selfish intentions. What China opposes is the vicious attempt by Western countries, including the United States and Japan, to discredit China, asking African countries to be wary of China at every turn, says the Chinese government. African countries, on the other hand, have their own judgment and do not need the West to tell them what to do. Furthermore, Japan pledged less at TICAD this year than China pledged at last year's Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, FOCAC, in Senegal. According to the Africa Center for Strategic Studies, Japan-Africa trade is also dwarfed by China's, which reached a record $254 billion last year. Some scholars see Tokyo's recent conference as an important tool for re-establishing Japan's presence in Africa in light of China's growing influence in the region. In this regard, Japan's ODA, Official Development Assistance, in Africa serves clear political objectives. Others believe Japan is attempting to consolidate its relationship, retaining a portion of what it has so that China does not displace it. However, Japan is losing an aid competition with China, because it cannot afford to provide Africa with the amount of money that China can due to a large national debt and a shrinking economy. Japan cannot also provide aid to countries accused of serious corruption and human rights violations, whereas China's loans are unconditional and preferred by some African countries. While FOCAC and TICAD are similar, there are several key differences. For example, the Chinese model involves the Chinese state directly cooperating with African ruling parties, whereas the Japanese model is more multilateral, involving civil society, NGOs, and international organizations such as the UN Development Programme and the African Development Bank. China's aid in Africa focuses on infrastructure and agriculture, whereas Japan's ODA covers a broader range of development issues, including human development. Furthermore, Japan tries to transfer knowledge and contribute to African self-sufficiency, and it has a post-war agenda that includes assisting in the push for peace and democracy. Japan, on the other hand, has an economic agenda that includes attempting to secure markets for its high-end products. It wishes to promote Japanese companies' activities in Africa. As Japan faces a number of socio-economic challenges, including economic stagnation and an aging population, the government wishes to capitalize on African economic opportunities. Tokyo has political objectives in Africa as well. Japan is vying for a permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council, and China is its main rival. Furthermore, African countries constitute the largest voting bloc at the United Nations. Tokyo is also concerned that African countries will side with China in areas such as the Western Pacific, where the two countries disagree over ownership of the Senkaku Islands, as they did in Ukraine. The Japanese are clearly concerned that African countries will be mobilized to support Chinese moves and Chinese strategic positions on issues, which is one of the reasons why the TICAD was so focused on diplomatically re-engaging African countries. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments section. Thanks for watching. If you like this type of content, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories.